Namaskar, Adab, Sat Sri Akal, and a very big hello to everyone. More than 200 years ago, Victor Hugo, who was an acclaimed poet, playwright, and a novelist in France, he had remarked that no force on the earth can stop an idea whose time had come. And no wonder these very words actually became very popular in India also in the year 1991 when the then finance minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, who later on became the Prime Minister of India, while delivering the revolutionary 1991 budget, which ushered the economic liberalization in India, made the same remarks. And when we look at the words uttered by Victor Hugo, we find that globally, all the big companies, whenever they emerged, they actually germinated from an idea whose time had come. If you look at the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts of the world, we find that all of them actually started from a very small idea, and it was because of the ecosystem, a very favorable ecosystem for that this idea got nurtured, and we see these giants now becoming bigger than even the GDPs of many countries. The concept of startup, which is the topic today, and the unicorns. Now, these two words are the buzzwords presently, and they have not become buzzwords only recently. It has taken so much of time in the last few years. So many small companies became big, and they gave a total, roadmap for the future companies to come and develop the same way. In US, which is actually home to the concept of startup and unicorns, the first signs or the green shoots of the startup and unicorn revolution became visible in the year 1971 when for the first time the Silicon Valley, this word was, it was uttered for the first time for an area or I could say an area neighboring the Stanford University, where a lot of tech companies started getting established, and that area got to be known as the Silicon Valley. And the energy built by this this neighborhood of Stanford University, by the advent of 1990s, we find that they start producing world-beating companies. And therefore, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Amazons, they were all startups to begin with. But then, when given the impetus of the ecosystem and a very worthy, management to lead those companies, we find that they become very big. But there are two things to be kept in mind. The first thing is that these big companies, they were not the first ones to come and revolutionize the ecosystem, because as we know, startups are by definition, they are small companies, they are companies which are in their infancy, they are companies which have the potential to disturb the existing environment all around, and it is the the disruption that they cause in the existing product line or the processes or the services which decides that they are going to now lead for the future. Now, for every Microsoft, one should always keep in mind that hundreds and thousands of social network companies came up and failed, and they could only give us one Microsoft. The same thing goes for, Amazon, and the same thing goes for Google, which certainly was not the first search engine, and there were many more such companies which attempted the same thing. But as I've already said, one in a thousand would emerge to become a Google or an Amazon. So there lies, the tragedy of this revolution, that so many minds would sit together, incubate an idea, but later on, only a few of them would become big successes. Now, when I talk about the disruptions, let me give you some examples. Now, you look at Airbnb. Now, this company actually has disrupted the lodging industry. Similarly, if you look at Uber, they actually disrupted the taxi industry, or the hailing business. And look at WhatsApp, which we all now, we can't live without WhatsApp these days. In the last 6 to 7 years, they have actually disrupted the whole telecom industry. So what we get to know from this is that startups are revolutionary ideas which have potential to disrupt the existing ecosystem and thereby make the products or the processes or the services much more efficient, customer friendly, cheaper to avail of, and therefore there lies the factor or the reason for their success. So this is how the idea built globally. And since, as I already said, 1 in 1,000 would become a star and would leave 999 as disappointed entrepreneurs. It was in 2013, for the same reason, that Aline Lee, who was Miss Aline Lee, who was the co-founder of Cowboys Ventures in the US, she coined this term which we now call unicorn, because unicorn was taken to be an imaginary white horse which would have a horn emerging from its forehead. And since it is so rare to find, and therefore the name unicorn was given to such startups who would become big in size over a period of time. Now, I must also share with you some terms associated with the size of the startup. So, a startup which is very small, which is say $1 million worth, would be known as a mini-cron. And a unicorn, which is now very popular these days, is a startup which has become bigger, and now it is enjoying a valuation which is in excess of $1 billion. Now, in the same vein, a sunicorn is a mini-cron which is vying to become a unicorn in near future. Similarly, a pentacorn is a startup which is having a valuation in excess of $5 billion. A decacron is $10 billion, and a hectocron, which is the biggest, which actually has all these biggies like Microsoft or Amazon, etc. They are the startups, or now the companies who enjoy a valuation in excess of $100 billion. So this is how this whole industry has evolved. And the biggest thing that we notice in the unicorn and the startup actually ecosystem as a whole is that in the last about 8 to 10 years, there has been a surge in the number of startups getting registered, new ideas emerging and disrupting the whole environment, and many of them emerging as unicorns. There are 2-3 important reasons for the growth of startups and unicorns. The first is the addressable market has become very big. So if I could metaphorically explain this, the earth is fast becoming flat from being round, in the sense that thanks to technology, the markets, a trade, a product or a service or a process would look for are now anywhere in the conceivable world, and one could reach any customer anywhere thanks to the technology. The second big factor is there has been an upsurge in the technology itself. So we have things like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning, and stuff like that. So these things have actually made the surge of startups much faster and much more, comprehensive. And the third, which is rather the most important factor for the emergence of startups and unicorns, is easy funding. So now there are the central banks across the world. Now they have extended an extra tap for funding of such brilliant ideas. And incidentally, in the last 2 to 3 years, thanks to the pandemic, if I can say thanks to the pandemic, since people were all confined to their homes, most of the offices and businesses were closed, and therefore it gave an opportunity to central banks to, to increase liquidity like never before. And this liquidity actually gave the encouragement to big investors to run for brilliant ideas and throw money at them. And therefore we find, as we are now going to discuss about India, we see lots of investors flocking to India, and you see buying stakes in emerging startups and later on the unicorns of India. Now, since we have already seen the global picture, let's move on to India, which has suddenly become, if I could say so, we must be very proud in the fact that India presently is the third biggest player in terms of producing unicorns, which is having a large, ecosystem of startups, out of which a number of unicorns, and we have all heard about names like Flipkart, Swiggy, Zomato, Nykaa, Ola, and Farm and so we are all familiar with this. So in India, as I told you, the surge has been so prominent that in the year 2021, we actually added 44 new unicorns, which was nearly 3.5 per month. And at present, as I am speaking to you, we are at a total number of 89 unicorns, out of which 8 have been produced within the these 40 days of the year 2022, which gives an average of a unicorn every 5 days. And no wonder, enthused by this, the Commerce and Industry Minister Shri Piyush Goyal recently said that he's looking at addition of 75 unicorns in the year 2022, and at an average of 1 unicorn every 5 days. I think that target is very much in our reach. Now, let me give you some idea about how in India we have developed a wonderful atmosphere, environment for the startups. You would be very happy to know that in the year 2015, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, in his 15th August speech, actually made announcement about Digital India as well as Startup India. These two very, very important initiatives. Now, this Startup India was actually a project which was to be handled by DPIIT. It is known as the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. It is a department which works under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, this department actually followed the Honorable PM's announcement on 16th of January 2016 by coming out with a 19-point program or core program, which would define how the startup and unicorn ecosystem was to be promoted in India henceforth. And it is a matter of great pride that by now more than 30 states and UTs have already rolled out their plans for promoting unicorns, startups, and which would later on lead to unicorns. So in this journey that we see in India, we find that although our first, and you would all be glad to when I recall about Infosys, which happens to be our first big startup way back in 1982 when Shri Narayan Murthy borrowed some money from his wife. Nobody knew that actually he was going to be instrumental in raising a monolith out of a startup. So there lies our a legacy in terms of raising unicorns in India. But the speed has not been too attractive all these years post Infosys, but it was only post 2016 that we find that there is a sudden surge in the number of unicorns being declared in India. So in the year 19 we had only added 9 unicorns. In year 2020 we added 10 only, but so happy to share that in the year 2021 we added 44, and as I told you, we already have 89 unicorns registered in India. And this is all because of the Startup India initiative, wherein the small firms can go register as startups. Now I'll quickly take you through the requirements for being registered as a startup in India. So you need to be either a private limited company, or you could be a registered partnership firm, or you could be a limited liability partnership in order to be registered as a startup. You should not be more than 10 years old, and your turnover should not be more than 100 crores. And much more than this, this firm, the applicant firm, should be involved in a disruptive kind of business, which is potentially aiming to improve upon the existing product line or the processes or the services, and at the same time it should be scalable. When I say scalable, it should be given the impetus that it would get from funding and rest of the positives. It should be able in the next few years to become bigger than what it is. So with the requirements, very happy to share that we have presently more than 63,000 startups registered with DPIIT, and it is still counting, and every day the number is rising. One can go to the site and see how it is, every minute it is changing. And recently it was told by the government that more than 6.5 lakh jobs have been created by these 63,000 plus startups, which fairly gives us an average of 11 employments or 11 jobs per registered startup. As I told you, they are small to begin with, but the beauty lies in the fact that as this number rises from 63,000 to more, and as these startups become bigger, this figure 11 per startup is going to become certainly bigger than 11. And in the years to come, these startups, they carry a huge potential of creating jobs in India. And the moment they become unicorns, which means they become bigger in operations, their potential to give jobs to much larger number of people also becomes bigger. I would also like to share 2-3 important things about startups and unicorns. Startups, as I told you when I defined it, mean they mean a very small business in infancy, having potential to disrupt, etc. But the moment this company gets listed, which is getting listed on say NSE or BSE, as happened in case of Paytm or Nykaa recently, or in the rest of the world with the other exchanges that they have. So the moment a company gets listed on any stock exchange or gets merged or acquires some other business, it ceases to be a startup, or for that matter a unicorn or a decacorn or hectacorn, because you remain this definition of startup and unicorn only recognizes those which are surging ahead, not those which have got already established, listed and being traded. So therefore, the point that I'm trying to make is that the number of unicorns can never be too big, because unicorns in turn, they become listed companies, or they are acquired, or they acquire others, and they lose the tag which is unicorn or hectacorn or pentacorn. So this interesting environment will keep surging like this. Needless to say, for a country like India, this is going to be a huge boon for our efforts for taking our economy to the 5 trillion mark, which is the dream of our Honorable Prime Minister. And at the same time, I believe that although we have achieved so much, and this year we are going to probably do better than many other countries also, I still feel that there are 2-3 areas where, if given impetus, this ecosystem that we have built so strongly can give much better results. One is our agriculture sector. So, although we have about 600 to 700 startups registered for the purpose of agri-tech, which is some way helping the agriculture, but I think many more are required, because this is one area where we are already doing very well. Agriculture sector in India is doing exceedingly well, but given some technological support, I am very sure it can give a huge a contribution in raising farmers' income, which again the present government has assured that the farmers' income needs to be doubled, and I think this can become one of the ways to do that. Another very important aspect is that although we are finding a lot of startup and unicorn activity in areas like fintech or e-commerce or pharma, healthcare, logistics, etc. But I think one area which would actually make the real difference is the core manufacturing sector. So we eagerly wait for some startups or unicorns to come and start working in the area of the core manufacturing sector, because it is the core manufacturing sector which, if given this kind of reinforcement, can do wonders for the economy. So overall, it looks a beautiful landscape where the Indians, which boast of, very happy to share that we boast of more than 25% of the engineering graduates in the world. And these are the people which have actually in the last few years, they have turned from being job seekers, they have become job givers. And I think any country where educated masses, they stop seeking jobs but start creating jobs, they can be the true agents of change in a great country like India. So our hopes are all with this beautiful ecosystem of unicorns, the startups, and we hope that given the government support and the funding, and recently in the budget which was actually delivered by the Honorable Finance Minister only a few days back, the tax benefits and the incentives which were extended to startups every year, they have now further been extended to 31st of March 2023, which is again a very big news and is going to help the cause of startups and unicorns. Now with this, our topic comes to an end. We'll be coming with such interesting topics every week, and our endeavor would always be to give you a lowdown on something which will give you a very good perspective about what all this area is or a program is. And so when you move forward and whenever you come across such discussions or you read about any such topic, for example, when you read about the startups and unicorns and their status in India, you would be a much better informed individual and you can participate in any discussion in a much better fashion. Under the Knowledge Nutshell channel, which this channel actually is, we are shortly coming out with a series which will be known as Legal Literacy for Everyone. And coming Wednesday, if all goes well, we would be launching that series, and the first in the series of Legal Literacy for Everyone would be there online, and I'm very sure the audience is going to actually benefit immensely from that series also. So thanks very much for all your support. Please take care. Namaskar.